right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Marry Me, a romantic comedy starring Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson that just came out this past weekend. It is Valentine's weekend, and we don't do enough romantic comedies here on the show, so I thought it would be a great time to finally get into one. And joining me for this is Rachel Wagner, who has been on the show before, and I was very happy to have her back, and we have a great conversation coming up about Marry Me. So before we get to that, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. It is my duty as a podcaster to make sure to tell you that. You can find us, of course, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Pocket Casts, on Good Pods, where we recently broke into the top 10 indie film podcasts list on there. So thank you to everyone who listens on Good Pods. And if you like what we do here on the show, make sure to drop the rating, 5 stars, a little review would be nice, but definitely drop a little rating, make sure you're subscribed, and we thank you so much for being out there and listening. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod, join our Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, and also, if you really like what we do here on the show, you can check out the Patreon, produced by David Rosen, the Patreon that combines content from this podcast, as well as Awesome Movie Year, which is another movie podcast I produce, and from my music career. I'm currently 18 songs deep into what is going to turn into my next couple of albums, actually. A whole bunch of new music I've been working on. So, I'm going to be posting some previews of that on the Patreon first, so there will be a lot of music coming there. There's also a soundtrack album that I'm probably not going to be releasing in an official capacity, but we'll put on the Patreon very soon. So lots of stuff hitting that Patreon soon. So check it out. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. Advanced episodes of Piecing It Together, bonus Awesome Movie Years, and lots of music. So, speaking of music, let's talk about J-Lo and this movie, Marry Me. All right, so it is Valentine's Day, and we're going to talk about a romantic comedy, which we don't do enough of here on the show, so I'm glad to be talking about this movie. It is Marry Me, and joining me is Rachel Wagner. Rachel, how's it going?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. Lots of movies. Getting this year. I keep saying this. Like, I feel like this is like the 5th or 6th time I've said this on the show. I feel like I'm getting the year started still, and it's February. I don't understand how it still feels that way, but yeah, and here in Vegas, it's like hot today, which is bizarre. Absolutely insane. So nothing really makes sense, but
yeah. Well, I think it kind of, we were really progressing, and things were, there was a sense of kind of propulsion, and then the whole Omicron thing kind of like break for a lot of us.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how everyone else feels, but that's kind of what it felt like to me.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty fair.
And then we're kind of starting again.
What the future holds, nobody knows. We're recording this on a Thursday. The episode's going up on a Monday. Things could change by then. Like,
we should say Happy Valentine's.
That's right. Just say Happy Valentine's and just roll along. So, let's talk about this movie. We're talking about Marry Me today, and I've been asking my guests lately when we kick these things off. Was this a big one for you? Were you like looking forward to this?
I actually was. I was really looking forward to this, and also to The Lost City that comes out next month.
Sure.
Because I love rom-coms, and we don't get very many rom-coms theatrically released these days. Very rare. And so I was just really excited J-Lo hasn't made a rom-com that she was the leading star in since 2010. So it's been a long time. We're excited to have her back to rom-coms. And there was a long time where we just hardly got any, if any. In the theater, so to have 2 in one in February, 1 in March, plus some other smaller releases, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I didn't like this as much as you did, but the thing that I like most about it is that, yes, it's back to that kind of classic rom-com feel. It's like, we don't get enough of these movies. When rom-coms do happen, they tend to be like these small streaming releases, or things like that. And so this, you get big movie stars, you get a relatively large production budget. It's a movie. It's like a
Yeah.
real movie, and you don't get that very often in this genre, at least lately. And it used to be like the biggest thing. And
Yeah.
so I do think in that throwback kind of a way, it does make it a fun thing.
Well, and I had my fair share of issues with the movie. It's definitely not a perfect film, but I thought it was entertaining enough. It's kind of interesting because there's this movie, but then there's also a smaller movie that's going to be going to Amazon Prime called I Want You Back,
Right.
which is an R-rated rom-com, but I loved it. I thought that was so great and funny and charming. And so I actually, even though I'm coming on for Marry Me, I would even more, if you can handle some R-rated content, I would even recommend that one more. It was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, we discussed that on our trailer roundup at the beginning of the month, and I am looking forward to checking it out. I do love the stars of it, and so I am going to have to watch it.
I knew nothing about it. I hadn't even seen the trailer. I mean, I just knew nothing. I was so busy.
Yeah.
And I went to see this. I went to a screening, and I was thoroughly charmed by it. Really enjoyed
that's
it.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, let's start getting into some puzzle pieces for Marry Me. We'll get more into the story and what works and what doesn't work and all that along the way. But what do you got for your first piece?
Well, the most obvious one that first came to my mind was Notting Hill.
Sure.
Because, with Notting Hill, obviously, you have a very famous, in this case, actress that falls for a, bookshop owner, charming bookshop owner. And then in Marry Me, you have the famous singer that falls for the, ordinary teacher. So it definitely has that similar kind of dynamic going on.
Yeah, you definitely get that culture clash into the celebrity lifestyle from just a normal, regular person. And that is like, we talk about some of the better rom-coms. I mean, Notting Hill is like squarely in the pantheon of like that era of what we all kind of think about and what we go back to. And so, that is definitely a good one to kick it off with. And I think that comparison, 100% makes sense, and I think is a really kind of good indicator of what they're going for at the very least with this movie.
Yeah. And one of my favorite scenes in Notting Hill is the scene where they go to the sister's birthday party. And it's her first time kind of meeting his friends and probably the first time that she's had friends for a long time. And I just think that is so well written.
Yeah.
It feels so authentic to like an actual kind of conversation with friends to me. And, they're all fighting over the brownie and, things like that. I love it. I think it's really good. And, and then you've got all like the horse and hound stuff, which is hilarious.
Yeah, sure.
And I think they've both never been more likable than in that movie, both leads.
Absolutely. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a while. I need to revisit it one of these days because I do remember it was great. But I will go for my first piece, kind of one that also gets into the exact same ideas as Notting Hill, but I think both of these movies kind of do it a little better than Marry Me, but I think they both kind of come from the same place, and that's Crazy Rich Asians from a few years ago. Just the idea of this person getting with their new romantic partner, and it gets them swept up into this huge culture clash into the world of like the obscenely wealthy and just all of the stuff that goes along with that, all of the oddities of being a part of celebrity culture and of having all these people at your beck and call and not being able to get rid of those people when you want moments of privacy, and all of the weirdities that go along with being a part of that kind of world for someone who's just kind of getting thrust into it and at a moment's notice. I think it kind of does a lot of that same stuff. There's also a little bit of the culture clash as well, with Owen Wilson being kind of a goofy white guy who gets thrown into this much more exciting lifestyle with a Jennifer Lopez type character. And so you get a little bit of that as well in there.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see that choice. I wouldn't have thought of it for some reason, but it has one of the most impressive weddings in recent memory in a movie, and sort of all the hullabaloo as far as what's happening from the trailer, but I did think that her wedding dress was really pretty. I really liked it. And I think the whole plot, I think it is key to have Jennifer Lopez in this role because she has been married so many times and she's had so many long-term relationships that have been public and we've seen it. I just feel like she's one of the only ones that could sell this kind of sort of crazy concept. I mean, she married at one point one of her dancers. Like I just feel like she's probably the only one that could kind of sell this whole concept of somebody doing this and somebody, marrying somebody she doesn't even know. And I think that it works better than it has any right to, partly because of her.
Right. Yeah. I mean, she is absolutely perfect for it. Like, it's hard to imagine this with anybody else. And there's even lines like, I know there's one line someone says to her, like, or no, she says it herself, I've never been nominated for anything. It almost feels like you're getting a little bit of a meta commentary in a moment like that. And I think it also kind of like speaks to what we were talking about before we got into the puzzle pieces of like kind of hearkening back to a time of bigger romantic comedies than what we get on streamers and stuff like that. Like, this is movie star stuff. You can't do this unless you have a big movie star.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I mean, she even had, a long relationship with a famous Latin singer. I mean, there's just a lot in there that I think you just couldn't have anybody else play the part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go on to some more pieces. What do you got for your next one?
So my next piece is more of a thriller. So it's not exactly, but I think it has a lot of similarities, is The Bodyguard.
Okay.
Yes. So we have another example of in this case, it is a famous singer that kind of falls for the common guy, the bodyguard. At this point, this has sort of a thriller kind of aspect to it, but, great chemistry between Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston, incredible soundtrack. And one of the strengths probably of Marry Me is the soundtrack. I think sometimes the musical montages are too long.
Sure.
But the songs themselves, I think, are pretty good, pretty catchy.
They're good.
Yeah, pretty catchy. And so certainly, I mean, The Bodyguard has one of the most famous soundtracks of all time. Some of the best songs ever sung. And so I think there's some similarities there.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a great one there. And yeah, the soundtrack is definitely one of the strong points of this movie. And of course, The Bodyguard, one of the all-timers when it comes to film soundtracks. So definitely that fits here. Again, I've got a piece that I think just kind of rolls right along with using The Bodyguard here. I'm going to go with the recent A Star Is Born, the Lady Gaga, Bradley Cooper one.
Good one.
In a lot of ways, A Star Is Born, you've got Lady Gaga as this Lady Gaga-esque pop star named Allie. There's a love story, but along with the love story, it's basically an entire new Lady Gaga album and lots of song performances, concert performances. It gets a lot heavier, a lot darker, of course, with the A Star Is Born story, with where things go, whereas Marry Me is more of just a straight-up rom-com and is not interested in getting into anything too heavy. But here, J-Lo gets to have her own alter ego in Kat Valdez, and her alter ego has an album that is somewhat J-Lo-esque, and she gets to do a whole lot of performances while also having a love story. So there's a lot of A Star Is Born in here, I think.
Yeah. The downside, I think, to this film, which is not the case in A Star Is Born, that chemistry was so good in that movie, and same thing with like I said, with The Bodyguard. I did not feel the chemistry between these two in Marry Me. Yeah. I never bought it. And I was hoping that I would.
I love Owen Wilson, but he's just like sleeping.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I from the trailers and stuff, I was like, oh, I've maybe sensing something here. It seemed like maybe they might have chemistry, but I don't know. It always seemed like he was just doing her a favor. It never felt like he was really in love with her.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I don't know if that falls more on the script or the performance, but yeah, his character just never is in it. Like he's just kind of just sleepwalking through all this. Even in the first, like, the major setup scene where it's at the concert and she's like, okay, I'll marry you to this, random guy in the crowd. And then all of a sudden he's up on stage, like doing the I do's. And I'm like, did they skip a scene here? Like,
Yeah.
where is this person like wrestling with this idea? He's just like, all right, whatever. I guess I'll do this now.
Yeah, it didn't really make sense. And then later on, they tried to have him say, "Oh, well, what about my daughter?" when his daughter was right there. So she's
Yeah.
already involved. It's not like he can kind of be like, kind of try to pretend it didn't happen, or I don't know. Yeah, I feel like that was, I don't know, not handled the best. Like they should have given him some more motivation aside from, "I'm a nice person and I saw that you were hurting."
Sure.
That's pretty much the only reason that they give. Where if they had it be like, we're going to give $1 million to your school if you go through with this, Mary. You know what I mean? Like some motivation to.
Just something.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what do you got for your next piece?
So my next pick is actually sort of the fake relationship part of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided to go way back. I'm changing it up from what I had messaged you. We're going way back to one of the very first, in this case, it's a Christmas rom-com. We're going back to Christmas in Connecticut. And Christmas in Connecticut was made in 1945, I believe. And It's all about this woman who is a writer. She writes like Happy Homemaker kind of pieces. And talking about all the food that she's making and the baby that she has and the happy family and the Christmas and everything. So then this soldier comes back from serving and contacts the magazine, says he wants the perfect Christmas that she's been talking about. But of course, she's like a single lady in the city who doesn't know how to do anything and has just been making all this up. And so then all of a sudden they have to scramble together and find her a husband and a baby and a house in Connecticut and everything and put on this show. And a lot of romantic comedies can hold their hold Christmas in Connecticut as their ancestor. And so when they're kind of creating this fake relationship of that they're going to tell everybody that they are, a happy, married couple, and they're putting on this front and everything like that. It kind of all goes back to the whole Christmas in Connecticut. And one of my favorite jokes in Christmas in Connecticut is, so they get the women that work at this factory to leave. One of the women will leave their baby at the house each day. And so every day she has a different baby, and the soldier's like, "What? What is this baby?"
That's pretty great.
Yeah, really funny. It's such a funny movie. Barbara Stanwyck is so great in it. So I highly recommend it. And I mean, I always love that whole sort of trope of the fake fiance, fake relationship kind of a thing. I think it's really funny. And I think that it would never happen in real life. I can't imagine that ever happening. But like for some reason, I'm able to suspend my disbelief and just laugh
Sure.
at it.
Yeah.
So that's my next piece.
Awesome. Yeah, I've never seen it, but it sounds really fun. And that's one of the things about rom-coms that work the best is, the bigger the concept, the bigger the idea, that you kind of have to run with it. And if it's able to grab you and make you run with the heightened reality of it all, then it's going to work the best.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will go with a more recent rom-com, one that didn't work that well, although I don't know, maybe we'll see if you like this one. But I thought of What Happened in Vegas.
Oh, I hate that movie.
Yeah, it's terrible. But Cameron Diaz, Ashton Kutcher, they meet in Vegas, and during a drunken night, they get married. They don't realize it happened. They wake up. They're stuck together, and rather than just getting a quick annulment, if I remember correctly, there's a lottery involved or something, and so they don't want to get an annulment immediately because of that. So they want to stick together because of that, and so they're stuck together. They decide to kind of try to make it work and to get to know each other after the fact, after already being married. So you kind of get this similar setup here in Marry Me, that this all just kind of just whiz bam just happens in the moment. There's no thinking about it. They just do it. They just get married, and they're going to have to get to know each other after the fact. And it's very different in the sense that what happens in Vegas kind of came out of a moment in pop culture where things were just all about excess and partying and just kind of grossness in the culture. And Marry Me comes out of a different kind of gross. It's more of like a online obsessed, celebrity obsessed, social media obsessed moment in the culture.
Well, that was one thing about the movie that I didn't really get, is that
The social
she's
media
supposedly
stuff.
well, yeah, because she's supposedly super famous as Jennifer Lopez, basically,
Right.
is the idea. I don't think that Jennifer Lopez has to like peddle Vitamixes. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
there was some stuff about it that I felt like there's no way that somebody on her caliber, her success level, would be doing this kind of social media that she does in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, my dream is for the podcast to get big enough that I don't have to do my own social media. So I hope J-Lo doesn't have to do her own social media.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
So
I
mean,
get that for sure.
the only way I could see her doing something like that is if it's like her own line. You know, if it's like what was her name, Kat or whatever. That if it's like, I could see her going on QVC or something like that and being like, but even then I
Sure.
feel like it's more of a B-lister kind of a thing to do. But
Yeah.
maybe if it's her, like the Kardashians have their own line and of stuff, and I could see, I mean, J-Lo's had her own lines of stuff. I could see that, but the fact that she was just like hawking Vitamixes on her Instagram, it just didn't make sense.
The funny thing about that is I feel like the reason they did that is strictly because it's kind of an image thing right now that everybody seems to think celebrities are all on social media, even though it's hopefully not them, But I feel like it's just part of that whole like Today Show culture and like stuff like that, where people just expect celebrities to be a part of social media, and so they're almost like writing it in as like a fantasy of that
Yeah.
being an actual real world thing. I don't know. I sure hope
And
not.
I think they were trying to create this like ultimate contrast between Owen Wilson, that he's like the record guy and the like never knows where his phone is guy and
Yeah, the flip
whatever,
phone.
like that kind of thing. But you can do that with her just being like a normal celebrity. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, what happens in Vegas? I would put it below Marry Me on the list of rom-coms. So, Marry Me definitely gets above there. So,
Yeah, they're just such jerks. I mean, I would probably be fine with it if I liked either of them, but by the end, I don't care that they're together. I don't want them to be together. I don't like either of them, and that is such a key in romantic comedies. It's such a key that they have chemistry in order to work, and that it must be so frustrating because I'm sure there's so many times when on paper everything works, but you put them together and it's just the chemistry's just not there, and that must be so frustrating. But also, they try to do as enemies to lovers sometimes. They didn't really do it in this movie, but in What Happens in Vegas, they do. And it's so tricky because the thing about people are always comparing everything to Pride and Prejudice. And the thing about Pride and Prejudice is that everybody loves Darcy and Lizzie, except for the two of them. They're the only two that don't get along. Everybody else thinks that they are the best people. And so we are invested in their relationship because we know that they're good people if they could just see it, if they could just figure it out. So that's the problem with something like What Happened in Vegas is it's like, this is just a jerk. We don't care.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And yeah, that if you can't get on board with these people, it's not going to work. Yeah. And thankfully you can here. So
yeah, you can enough for it to.
Yeah,
like it's not a great movie, but it's serviceable.
Sure,
that's what I would say.
So what do you got next?
Okay, my next one is another person falling in love with a famous person movie. Very iconic. It's Roman Holiday. And Roman Holiday is all about a princess who, I guess, escapes or leaves her castle, and she's in Rome. And there's a newspaper reporter played by Gregory Peck. The princess is, of course, played by Audrey Hepburn. She won an Oscar for the role.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decides to take her through the day and taking pictures with his friend is there and taking pictures of her experiencing all these new things that she never gets to experience because she's a princess.
Sure.
And they have this great day and they kind of start to fall for each other. And it's just very sweet and very romantic and has that kind of every man falls for the, celebrity princess, whatever you want to say. So I think it has a lot of that dynamic here.
Yeah, absolutely. And a classic. Yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's got to be an inspiration on something like this. And especially that whole dynamic of the incredibly wealthy and or famous, woman and the guy who's just kind of along for the ride and figuring things out as he goes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and also that just kind of day in the life where they're just having a semi-normal day to get to know each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do want to say I thought the little girl, I guess Chloe Coleman, I thought she was excellent. She's a good little actress, I think.
She was. Yeah, she was really good. I also want to mention, this kind of speaks to this point a little bit. Another one of my little issues with the movie, not that big of an issue, but I was so taken aback by Owen Wilson's apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a thing in TV all the time, especially TV, sometimes movies too. But I almost thought there was going to be a big third act twist that he's actually a secret billionaire. Like, his apartment was the nicest thing I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, I thought J-Lo's place it was like a step down J-Lo's place from his apartment. But
that's true.
I don't know.
It's really nice.
Very strange production design choices there. But all right, I'll go on to another piece here. I'm going to go with Yes Man, the Jim Carrey comedy. This movie, Marry Me, it seems to have a big kind of power of positive thinking kind of thread running through it. There's a lot of scenes of Jennifer Lopez's character talking herself into doing things, into just saying yes, into just going with what the universe gives her and taking a chance. And then we also get moments of Owen Wilson's character kind of having to have those moments where he's just not sure if this is what he should do, but I'm just going to go with it and see what happens. And so I felt like there's like a lot of that positive thinking stuff going on here, which I always think of Yes Man when you see movies with that.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it definitely has a very sweet message, sweet heart to it that it's trying to have. And even with the Bastian character, even he kind of gets a little bit of a redemption arc in the end. They're not too hard on him for what he does. I mean, did you think that Maluma and Jennifer Lopez had better chemistry than Owen Wilson and Jennifer Lopez?
100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, part of that goes back to Owen Wilson just sleepwalking his way through this movie. I mean, he's always been just such a chill guy. That's part of his appeal. He's like this kind of surfer dude kind of thing. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's dialed up to 11 here. He's just chill. It's just there's not much there.
Yeah.
But yeah, Maluma is a very charismatic performer, though.
Yeah, and he's been great in some romantic comedies. I mean, I love Midnight in Paris is one of my favorite movies, and you could even say something like Wedding Crashers or some of these other movies that he's done. That he can be really charming and likable, but I don't know. Just in this case, it just didn't work.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
It felt like he just wasn't invested in his character.
That's what it seemed like. But he's still fun to watch just because he's Owen Wilson, and you wait the whole movie for him to say wow, and he just never did it though.
I thought Sarah Silverman was really weird in her role as well.
Sarah Silverman was a very her her jokes just weren't there.
No.
Like, she was just strangely written. It was also kind of weird to see John Bradley in 2 movies 2 weekends in a row.
Yeah, that was kind of
weird coming off
He's kind of
Moonfall.
cringing in both. I feel like this guy is James Corden light.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I don't think John Bradley would like that. But
yeah, sorry, John. I'm sure you're a super lovely person, but
I'm sure.
Yeah, that was my impression. They also underused, and I'm going to butcher his name, but Utkarsh, Ambadukar.
This was which character was this?
He was the coach of the other team, telling him they should give
right,
and not do it, and forfeit the match or whatever. And I'm like, that was weird to have him in such a small role.
Right, very small. Yeah, I don't know with that character. It's an interesting thing to just kind of just throw somebody in a small role like that.
That can be distracting when you have that.
Absolutely. Well, what do you got for your next piece?
Okay, my next piece is the movie Green Card.
Oh, sure.
And this movie is also another sort of fake relationship movie. And it's Andy McDowell and Gerard Depardieu. And he gets her to pretend that they're married so that he can get a green card. And she does it because she wants to get into this apartment where it's only for married people. And so, obviously all kinds of shenanigans. And
sure.
Yeah, I like it. I think I would say it's a little bit underrated as far as rom-coms. And it's funny, and I think they have pretty cute chemistry.
Yeah, I remember it, but I'm pretty sure I never actually saw it. But I could imagine that cast and that setup could definitely make for a good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of like a marriage of convenience plot, fake fiance plot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I only have one last one, and it's a very small one. But it's hard to talk about romantic comedies without talking about Love Actually and big romantic gestures handwritten on pieces of poster board. You think of Love Actually. So it's a little one, but I figured I had to include it.
Is that your favorite of the love stories in Love Actually?
I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of fun in there. It's kind of hard to pick.
It's a mixture between fun and depression.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah, we just covered this in Awesome Movie Year, and it's a really hard thing to pick like your favorite story within it.
I mean, I think probably my favorite, just because I like cheesy romance, is probably Hugh Grant and the secretary or whatever. That's pretty cute, and him
Hugh Grant's just so good.
Yeah, knocking on doors. My least favorite is the sex stand-in people, like that story. I also, I guess it's good they have the Laura Linney one, because it's kind of, you're more bittersweet. It's not all, like if they all were like the Hugh Grant one, it would be too much.
Sure.
Like we got in the Gary Marshall movies that were so bad, they tried to do the same thing. But I don't know. Yeah. I don't love that one still. Even saying that, I still don't love it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's taken over the conversation in a lot of like this entire genre. So I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, I like the movie. I mean, I also really like Bill Nighy. He's hilarious.
Oh, yeah, he's great.
Yeah, so that's good. There were a couple others that I thought of that I don't know if they need to be full pieces, but I thought of Coming to America. That's a movie that's also about a royalty that and has a love story with a commoner. I thought of Anastasia, another movie with a royal that falls in love with a commoner. And I thought of Born Yesterday, and it's like maybe a little bit of a stretch because she's supposed to fall in love with this. She's supposed to marry this like kind of like mobster guy, but then she ends up falling for this kind of nobody guy, this reporter, and it's really, it's great, so good, and Judy Holliday is so good in it. That one I feel like has like a little bit of that same dynamic.
Sure.
So those were some ones that I thought of, And they do mention in the movie, they mention Camelot, and they actually dance to If Ever I Would Leave You. And so, yeah, there's Camelot.
Yeah, absolutely. We might as well keep that on the list as well. But yeah, those are all good ones to include on here. Yeah, the only other thing I had thought of, and this is probably way off base, but the whole Meghan Markle Prince Harry thing, that's another like being swept away into just this world of just over the topness. And I didn't really have a movie. I guess the Lifetime trilogy that those could fit, right? I don't know which ones of those I've actually watched. So maybe one or two. They're just awful. But so yeah, that's like a little asterisk at the bottom of my list. So cool. Our finished list then is Notting Hill, Crazy Rich Asians, The Bodyguard, A Star is Born, Christmas in Connecticut, What Happens in Vegas, Roman Holiday, Yes Man, Green Card, Love Actually, Coming to America, Anastasia, Born Yesterday, and Camelot. You know, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, I don't cover enough romantic comedies on this show, so I'm really glad we did this. There's a lot of them here to get into with the pieces and just talking about this movie itself. Are there any like closing thoughts you had? Any other things we didn't really quite get into?
Well, I think that we need more romantic comedies. Yeah, Marry Me may not be perfect, but I think there's something about the genre that's really important that we keep having them, and we've had too little of them because romantic comedies at their heart give you hope. They're about believing in love and believing in good outcomes and happily ever afters. And I think that that's important. I think we need to tell more stories with happy endings. I mean, I think we need both. I think we need the somber pieces, but I think we also need love stories and we need happy endings. And it's important to share those as a culture. And so more, please. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And like I was saying at the beginning, I think the idea, I'm a big, theater purist or whatever. Like to me, seeing movies in the theater is just the way to be. And although I did watch this at home on a screener, but seeing big movies in a big way is always so much more fun and so much more exciting. And I want to see more rom-coms in that format. I want to see them actually get made with decent budgets and big stars and, and be movies rather than just being little forgettable things that just show up on a streamer and then nobody talks about them again. I like that this is one that hopefully will catch some attention and actually keep it for a little while.
I agree. I hope it does well. I really do.
So that does it for Marry Me. Rachel, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Well, I actually, the same week, I saw another romantic comedy called I Want You Back, which is an R-rated romantic comedy, so it won't be for everybody, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. I thought they had great chemistry. So actually, ironically, even though I came on for Marry Me, I think that it's the better new rom-com.
Sure.
But you can watch that one on Amazon Prime, and then we have The Lost City coming up in March, which I'm really hopeful will be good. Crossing fingers.
I'm looking forward to that too. And planning on watching I Want You Back this weekend, so I am looking forward to that. But awesome. Rachel, thank you so much for doing the show again. And why don't you tell people where they can find you and your pod and all that?
Yeah, you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, and on iTunes and YouTube. I do family movie nights every Monday. I cover lots of animation. And then over on Hallmarky's podcast, we cover all the rom-coms, the holiday films, over there, all the Hallmark films. So check that out. We have a lot of fun over there. And you can hear David's, he composed our new theme. So definitely you should check it out.
Absolutely. Yes. Everybody check that out. And Rachel, thank you so much for doing the show again. Hopefully we'll get you back again sometime soon.
Yeah, I'd love it. Anytime.
Check out the Sonic Cinema podcast, where film critic Brian Scuttle takes you through the year discussing classic films, reviewing modern hits and misses, covering film festivals, and interviewing filmmakers and film critics. Click subscribe at YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Google, and other platforms, or follow along at www.sonic-cinema.com.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Marry Me. Thanks to Rachel Wagner for joining me on that one. It was a fun one to talk about for sure. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you enjoy what we do here on Piecing It Together, make sure you are subscribed. Wherever it is you listen to podcasts, you should be subscribed there. And if you wouldn't mind being so awesome to drop us a little 5-star rating, that would be really appreciated. Just trying to get those ratings up and the reviews and all that stuff, wherever it is. If there's a star button, hit the star button, not the 1-star, not the 2-star, although, I mean, if you don't like the show, sure, whatever. But, 5 stars, that would be awesome. Do it. And then keep listening. You could also share the show. We really appreciate when you do that. Follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And I told you at the top of the show about our Produced by David Rosen Patreon. You can always check that out as well. So, I'm realizing, speaking of music making, we're coming up on the 5-year anniversary of this podcast, and every year I update the music theme, the intro and the interstitial musics for the show, and I'm going to have to do that soon. Note to self, adding that to my to-doist list right now. But for now, let's wrap this thing up with a piece of my music like we always do. And I was kind of looking for something, a little dancey, I guess, a little poppy kind of. I don't really, a lot of my music is kind of dark, even though, like the music I did for Rachel's podcast is not dark at all. But a lot of my music on my albums is very dark and gloomy and stuff like that. So I don't have a lot of upbeat tracks to play. But I thought this one might work. It's called Where Shadows Go. It's from a free bonus album that's exclusively available on my Bandcamp, davidrosen.bandcamp.com. This was one of 3 bonus albums I put out kind of in between main releases with extra B-side type tracks and remixes and stuff like that. So, yeah, this track is called Where Shadows Go. Hope you enjoy it. Like I said, the album is free on the Bandcamp, so go check out the rest of the album. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that track was still pretty gloomy.